Greetings and welcome to In-Depth. I'm Dike Rostant. The Ministry of Public Administration has many topics that we can go in-depth on. E-Human Capital Management, Modernization Project, Property and Real Estate Services Division, online, admin centers, budget allocations for 2010 to 2024, which were recently uploaded to the Ministry's website for public perusal. But what the Minister, Alison West, joins us today to speak to is the imminent implementation of the amended dress code policy for government offices. Thank you for making the time, Minister. Let's start off, though, because I remember hearing November 2023. What is the effective date that people can have a slightly amended dress code walking into government offices?
It's actually a significantly amended dress code, and it's on Monday, 15th of January, 2024.
The 15th of January. Now, what, and I think sometimes it makes sense to do some world building. So if we look at dress code versus attire versus appearance, even things like business casual, I think these mean different things to different people. Indeed. So what are some of those things?
Okay, so that's why we have avoided all of these expressions and just told people what is acceptable in terms of actual wear and what is not. So cover your upper body. The arms are excluded, so you can wear sleeveless. Cover your lower body up to at least mid-thigh. Wear shoes, your choice, but shoes that you are safe in. You may cover your face either for health reasons, religious reasons, or whatever else, but we may ask you to remove your mask and be decent.
Okay. And even that, I think, sometimes can feel as though it's a bit subjective.
Of course.
But what were some of the main drivers of this change, this significant change as they describe it? Okay,
so we haven't had a formal policy previously in the government. We have had things that have developed over time, a lot of it coming out of colonialism and post, that have not been updated, that are not evenly applied across the public service. So you could put on something, leave the house, go to one government ministry and get served, and go to another one and get refused entry. So we thought it was important at this time to look at it, to modernize it, to relax it, and to make it as across the board as possible so that there's clarity in what is acceptable, and most importantly, to ensure that we maximize the opportunity for people to get the service that they require.
And you say that and you raise the point, it makes me think of who does this policy affect the most? One of the things I'm thinking about is security personnel, because this, in the example that you would have given, someone may enter dressed a certain way and then possibly, okay, I need to go to this place again, and then they said, no, I'm sorry, you can't come in like that.
Yes.
So is there a program rollout that has been taking place, or so that it's not as though, okay, well, one level knows, but another level doesn't?
Yes, the reason why there was a time span between when the policy was approved by Cabinet and the rollout on Monday is because one of the things we had to do was to train, especially the frontline staff, to ensure that there's even treatment, there's an understanding of not only the actual policy, but the approach. So that we have done that, we have also identified in each ministry, agency, and division customer service reps, so that if there is a dispute, even with the relaxed policy, they can step in and not only manage the situation, but try to ensure that the person receives service, even if they're not compliant with the dress code.
And I appreciate that, because I think sometimes it's almost as though that you find the frontline staff feeling themselves caught in a situation, because they're interacting even before the person is able to get inside.
Exactly.
And they're hearing where uncle reached from, or they're hearing what happened to auntie. And sometimes I've heard of instances, anecdotally, where someone was saying, well, possibly if you take a plastic bag and cover that hole. So it's not as though they're in that position anymore.
That's correct. There is somebody they can turn to, and we have tried to reiterate and emphasize that the focus should always be about providing the service and not refusing entry. So we're hoping that they have learned, they have listened. The sessions were very interactive. We trained about 421 members of staff, both in Trinidad and in Tobago. So we are hopeful that we can minimize any negative fallout.
I know sometimes we could do and do till we overdo.
Exactly.
take me down the road of that word called decent.
Yes. Okay, so we have specifically indicated some of the things we don't want to see. So no bath suits, nothing above mid-thigh, no gang-related insignia that could cause violence to erupt, no indecent pictures or exposures, no bareback. So those are the kinds of things we're hoping that people will stay away from.
And where can individuals get an idea of some of these, well, some of the information, some of the do's and some of the don'ts? Because I like the fact, as opposed to saying, okay, well, this is, and you have these kind of very finite incremental sort of guidelines. There are these do's and don'ts, but
Right.
where can individuals get them?
Well, we have been advertising them through the press. We do have them up on our website and on other websites, and we have posters in the ministries themselves. So there, we are trying to ensure that people know even before they get dressed to leave the office, their house, what will be acceptable and what is not, because we don't want to keep turning people away.
Okay. And you speak of turning people away. What's the scope of these buildings or areas? Is it that everything that the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago has controlling interest in, this is where the dress code applies to, or what is the scope?
The dress code applies to government offices. So there are other government buildings where the dress code will not apply. So police stations, you may have an emergency and you need to be able to go in whatever you have on. The hospital, same thing. Schools have a different code. The courts have a different code. The community centers, sporting arenas. So these are all government-owned buildings, but because of the nature of the activity, their dress codes are different. But when you're going to government offices to receive government services, by and large, this dress code applies. The exception will be when you are going to take pictures for national ID purposes. So the Election and Boundaries Commission, the Licensing Authority, and the Immigration Office, they will have their own dress codes for the purpose of taking pictures.
All right, and take me once more down the road of footwear, please, because I know some people have some very ornate, so like sandals, and some people have slippers. What whole shoes? What is the?
All of the above are acceptable. We are just saying to you, be careful that whatever you wear allows you to be safe.
That feels as though if you fall and you didn't have water there, don't come talk to us.
But of course, if you are going into a site that is under construction, you need to take the relevant OSH measures to protect yourself. So that, in circumstances like that, enclosed shoes may be necessary, but in the normal course of things, slippers are acceptable.
And that makes sense. Like that, it seems sensible. But in terms of actually getting information, feedback, who are some of the stakeholders that would have gone into saying, okay, well, this is what we're going to do to formalize this kind of policy?
Members of my ministry, we would have done the research, both in terms of what's happening locally, what problems we've encountered, what's been happening abroad, what's the trend like, to come up with a draft policy. We ran that past a few people, and then we took it to cabinet for approval. And what will happen is we will continue to monitor how the policy is implemented and enforced, and whether any problems continue to arise.
All right, and with that, we take a short break. We are returning. We're talking about getting into the dress code policy to enter government offices. We're doing so with Senator Alison West, Minister of National Administration, Public Administration. Thank you. Stay with us. We return with more. Welcome back. We are speaking with the Minister of Public Administration, Senator Alison West, and looking at the dress code policy and just taking a bit from the release that was shared. This dress code policy, without discrimination by reason of race, origin, color, religion, or gender, outlines the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago's framework to ministries, departments and agencies, MDAs, and clients or visitors regarding the management of attire and appearance at all government offices throughout Trinidad and the central government in Tobago. The policy adopted by the GORTT towards clients or visitors in accessing government services is to ensure that all clients or visitors shall be served once their attire and appearance are in keeping with the requirements approved in this policy. And so the nuances, I think, are very important. So give me the difference between client and visitor in this dispensation, thanks.
In terms of the dress code, it wouldn't make a difference. Anybody who is not working at the ministry but visiting the ministry can adopt the dress code and they'll be fine.
And I like the fact that you talk about clients and visitors.
Yes.
What about people working at these MDAs who are a little hopeful?
Their dress code is different from the relaxed dress code for visitors because they're still working. And a working dress code needs to be maintained. We are looking at that to see if we need to make any adjustments, but it certainly will not mirror what's the visitor dress code.
So, well, I asked the question, huh? You got the answer. And Mommy said a word to the wise is sufficient.
Indeed.
But looking at the fact that this work has gone on, what is next in terms of what is the next thing that you think we'll be seeing in terms of changes, possibly evolutions of policies coming from the Ministry of Public Administration?
Well, in terms of how we treat with people, we have the long-awaited work-from-home policy that is being explored with a view to determining whether we can launch it in the public service, because that will only be positively considered if we can satisfy the powers that be that it is not going to compromise the service, because the important thing always is service to the public. So we are exploring that. We're hoping to come to a landing later this year, and at that point we will let the public know whether or not the work from home policy can be introduced and in what form. So there's that. We are building out admin centers, which we are seeking to make a one-stop shop. So all of central government services. We already have two in Tunapuna, but they are limited in size. So the amount of services we can offer are limited. But we are building out one in Point Fortin now and about to start one in Arima. And we're hoping to build this in a way where all of central government services can be offered there. So you go to one place and you can get all the services you require.
I was waiting for you to say Arima because it feels as though Arima is this catchment area that allows for so many things to be modeled. As people talk about beta testing before you can scale it out.
Right.
And really looking at the fact that, and this will address so many, or should help to address so many things, because we talk about transportation, we talk about being able to get things in an area, and just this ease and efficiency of being able to do work, which should lead to so much more.
Indeed. And one of the things, I was looking at a video recently that was put out about somebody going to a government service and saying, okay, I need my license, for example. And then they would say, okay, you need to go and get your driver's permit. You need to go and get a copy of this. So a one-stop shop will minimize that. But over and above that, what we're trying to do is re-engineer the processes so you don't have this toing and froing. So people know when they're going, these are all the things you need. And some of the things that you currently need, hopefully you will not need in future because of the digitalization and interoperability programs that we're also working on.
I'm not going to ask about timelines for those things. But is there any sort of pushback? Because I can imagine people saying, well, if you can get it there, you might need me here. So what are those conversations like at this point?
The concern regarding security of jobs, of course, arises, especially in respect of the digitalization program. But I keep telling people digitalization does not mean that we need fewer people. We need people to do different things, more impactful things, make their job more interesting and strategic, rather than checking to see how many vacation days you have. There should not be somebody having to sit at a desk doing that. But there are other things they can do to look at how HR operates, to get people involved in more impactful training, to look at succession planning. There's so many areas that are currently being ignored because we are focusing on minutia. So we're trying to move away from that.
And with that in mind, I'd also encourage individuals to continue to look at the various platforms, this is website and digital, social media platforms, to find out what is happening, because I think that deadline just passed. for vacancies for, I think it was the EHCM, and that would have been the 9th.
Correct.
So I don't want people to say like, oh shucks, there's a saying, my foot was short.
Right, yes.
So in terms of like seeing what is happening and being up to date. But with that though, what some of the other things in terms of the admin, like the admin centers, is there idea of how many you'd want and how they'd be spread? Because you spoke about Point Fortin, Tunapuna, eventually Narima. What is the general vision for that?
I would like to place one in all of the central locations. So one in San Fernando, one in Chaguanas, one in Tobago. Certainly at the very least, to ensure that people can get services closer to home and that they will not, as a general rule, have to leave wherever Moruga or Point Fortin to venture into Port of Spain to get whatever they need.
And with that, we have about 2 minutes more. So I want you to look at your camera and wrap a bow on this conversation in terms of like what it is you'd like individuals to take away from it with regard to the dress policy. And that word decent is just, the way that I can see the potential for subjectivity is interesting to me from jump. But just take us out with a closing statement or thoughts.
Okay, so the dress policy is just an indication of the movement that the Ministry of Public Administration is trying to make to focus more on serving the public rather than forcing people to obey rules and regulations. While rules and regulations are important and we have to have them and we have to adhere to them, one, we are trying to modernize them, but two, we're trying to ensure that always we remember that we are here to serve the public. Decent, I think we know what decent means. There will be some discussion and there is subjectivity, but at the end of the day, we are trying to ensure that members of the public get the service that they seek from government offices as efficiently and as stress-free as possible.
Now you say that and I want to take it back to ask another question in terms of like, just remind me of the sequence of events and the process. If the frontline, the person who would greet somebody at the customer, the client, the visitor, and there is an issue, there's a gray area, and that needs to be discussed. Walk me through that process.
Okay, so if you encounter frontline staff at the security receptionist who is not, you find not being facilitative, you can ask to speak to the customer service rep or that person's manager. And they should either resolve the issue by letting you in or say, we may not be able to let you in because you're not appropriately dressed, but let us see how we can help you to secure the service nonetheless. If neither of those work, then the Ministry of Public Admin is there to receive your complaint and action it as appropriate.
And with that, we want to thank you very much, Minister West, Senator Alison West, Minister of Public Administration. On behalf of the entire news team, I'm Dike Rostant. Thank you so much for joining us.